Good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024 for our Ottawa City Commission meeting. Let's start with roll call, please.
Mayor Skidmore,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler,
Present.
Commissioner Clayton,
Present.
and Commissioner Crowley.
Present.
We're all here and accounted for. We've got a few people here in the gallery here and watching also hopefully on the internet or some other social media. So we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation that'll be given by our city manager.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord God, when you came among us, you proclaimed the kingdom of God in villages, towns, cities, and lonely places. Grant that your presence and power may be known throughout this land. Have mercy upon all of us who live and work in Ottawa, and grant that all the people of our nation may give thanks to you for food and drink and all other bodily necessities of life. Respect those who labor to produce them, and honor the land and the water from which these good things come. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Brian. We'll go right to public comments. Do we have any today?
We have none registered.
None registered, okay, thank you. We'll skip number 7 since we don't have anything tonight for that item, but we do for item 8, consent agenda, which would be the minutes from the March 20 meeting, the March 27th meeting, and we also have reappointments to city boards and commissions on page 9, as well as the agenda approval. Do we have an approval for our agenda tonight?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner,
I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
is there a second?
I'll second.
All good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are good for go. I'll go on to item number 9, declaration. This time I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. We're good on that. We'll move on to item number 10.
Item A, continued discussion of donation by Power of the Past Antique Engine and Tractor Association.
The association has offered to donate $50,000 to build an additional shelter house in Forest Park. And I believe Michael's going to take the start of this. Good morning. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Can we go to the next slide? Yep, there we go. Okay, so it is recommended tonight that the City Commission accept the donation of $50,000 from the Power of the Past for the purpose of constructing a new shelter house in Forest Park. The approximate size of that is 30 foot by 40 foot. Next slide. So the Power of the Past has been hosting annual tractor shows since 1995. They've grown quite a bit over the years, and annually they donate to the Dare Camp and to Forest Park. And Forest Park donations have, we've used that money for their donations for new parking bumpers, new picnic tables, things that help enhance the park. At the March 20th City Commission meeting, the club came to make a generous donation of that $50,000 to construct a new shelter house. And I think I just read all that. I'm sorry. I lost my place. We do have an LOI outlining the gifts, intended purpose, and acceptance of the city's desired contributions to the project was emailed on March 27th. Mayor Skidmore, Commissioner Crowley, myself, and City Manager Silcott met with the club, most of its board members, to discuss the design and aesthetic concept for additional improvements to the structure. We did that, was that Monday night? Yeah, Monday night. I think we need to go to the next slide. Nope. I think we're there. Yep, good job, guys. The LOI outlines the framework for a mutual agreement between the city and the Power of the Past. Some key points of the LOI include the commitment of the Power of the Past to donate $50,000 to the city for the construction of a shelter, Also, the city's obligation to use funds specifically for the construction, equipment provision, and utility extension to the new shelter house. And acknowledgement that while the donor proposes a design, the city does reserve the right to make final decisions to ensure compatibility with Forest Park's overall aesthetic and functionality. If we go to the next slide, you'll see the green highlight there in the corner. That is a, you can see kind of maybe, but there's no parking, additional parking right there. So that's pretty much just two-lane road right there. So that would be, the green area would depict proposed parking for the shelter house. The yellow square is the approximate location of the shelter house. Next slide. So some financial considerations. The $50,000 gift creates a near offsetting revenue source. The current fund balance is a little over $407,000. We've got $65,000 worth of encumbrances out there, and the available estimated fund balance of $87,000 to cover project costs. Legal considerations, the city attorney Finch has reviewed the donation's terms and conditions and advised on the creation of a memorandum. If we go to the next slide, it is recommended the city commission deliberate the approval of the acceptance of the $50,000 donation from the Power of the Past for the construction of a new shelter in Forest Park, subject to the completion of a mutually agreed upon terms of a letter of intent. And with that, I will take questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of Michael?
I wonder if you could back up just one slide again so that we can just review those, those financial considerations. And I don't necessarily know that I have any questions. I just wanted to look at them once again.
Yes, Commissioner, we'll be operating that in the Special Parks and Rec Fund, which has, even with currently planned and encumbered for active projects, sufficient liquidity to cover the small amount of materials that would be required for the purchase for the city's participation in this. And also it would be reflected with an offsetting revenue from their contribution as far as the larger expenditure amount.
And this particular fund, Special Parks and Rec, also receives a yearly allocation from the water line. Is that from the water line insurance and those insurances that we've run into? We did that 10 years ago with NLC. And is that correct?
The insurance fund?
Right.
Yeah.
I believe
That's where it
so.
was originally intended to go to.
I don't believe it is I don't believe it's going there any longer as a revenue source. I want to say that's going to the water reserve.
If
But-
we're talking about the service line warranty agreement.
Yes.
It actually, I think, is receipted into the economic development fund.
Yeah, we probably need to do some history on that because that's not what it was originally intended for. It was originally intended for special parks. When we voted for it, it was voted for special parks. So if it's going into economic development, that's the wrong fund.
If it's not in special parks, it would be in that one.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I, for one, David, thank you, gentlemen, for being out there to show us where you're looking. I think you picked a perfect spot for this location. There's kind of a distance between several shelter houses from that spot. And I appreciate you meeting with us out there and working with us on this letter of intent. I assume everything's good with the letter of intent, and David, you're good? Okay, so I think it looks good to me the way it's read here. So I'm certainly excited about this. I think it's a great addition to our park. It's a win-win for everybody, and I'm certainly thankful for this. Do you have anything you want to say, David?
I do have a question, Michael. Did you check with QSI to see if we're still in line on,
We are.
okay,
We are.
You mean regarding cost?
no.
Oh.
on
Timing?
frame of
Timing.
building.
Okay. I know, because you do have certainly do have a,
We would like to have it, basically done so we can use it by
right,
September.
absolutely.
Yeah, we certainly want that. And David, I think somebody with your group pointed out a dead tree not too far behind where the building will be located. We'll look at that. We don't want this tree to fall on our building unless we get it built, so we will look into that and get that taken care of too. So I appreciate you guys being out there working with us on this. So we thank you for your donation. I will certainly entertain a motion to, do we need a motion to accept this? I say,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, Commissioner.
I move that we approve to accept the $50,000 donation by Power of the Past Antique Engine and Tractor Association.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Let's take a roll call vote on this, please.
How do you vote, Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much, David. I remember which pocket you put that in the other day. Is it still? Oh, yeah.
Remember, he's a banker. He was watching everything
I was watching
you had
every
done.
move, that's
Yes.
right. But we do thank you for that. We'll get a picture with us.
Okay. Yeah, you tried your darndest to get it Monday night, and it didn't come out.
It's what built the fund, actually.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to tell you, I appreciate you getting along with us on this, and, you know, this will be a nice addition to the park, and it's something everybody can use. Like I'd said before, we need it 3 days a year. And so the rest of the year, it's there for the community, everybody to use, because we couldn't have our show without your park. And we try to give back and help on it. And, you know, this donation won't cost the taxpayers anything. So, I mean, it'll be something that everyone can use, and we really appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you again, and you can express your thanks to the family too. For
Yes.
the donation. I really appreciate this very much. This helps.
Because other than that, we do want to put that sign out, or a plaque, and Power of the Past will pay for that. It won't come out of that 50,000. And so we're going to pay for it, and the park guys said they would set it when it got done. So thank you all very much.
Mr. Reeves, can you remind the public who it is that you are able to build this lovely?
Yeah,
new
we had
structure?
a member pass away here a few years ago. His name's Terry Wolford, and he left us some money, and then we also got a $10,000 donation to use on this from the Gibson Foundation this year. And they are excited that we're going to use it for a community project, you know, and they're on board with that too. So,
It's always a good thing. Well, you certainly helped us put Ottawa on the map every September, so
Well,
thank you for your contribution, what you guys do. It's hard work to put this together, I know, but
yep,
you do a good job every year.
it doesn't just happen.
I bet, I know, a lot of help behind you, I
So,
know.
but guys, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your patience too.
And
All right.
we're gonna leave, so,
Okay, fair enough.
But before you go, you know, I want to point out, and I hope the mayor doesn't mind me saying this, but, you know, you said without our park, it wouldn't be, it's everyone's park.
Yeah.
It's every
Yep.
citizen's park. It's not anybody up here. It's nobody. It's everybody's park. And so
Well,
we're so glad that everyone
yes.
will have the opportunity to utilize.
We had our members meeting last night, and that's what I told the people there that at the meeting. I said, this isn't my club. I may be the president, but it's you guys' club. And it's the same way here. I mean, it's not, you know, you guys kind of give direction, and that's, you know, everybody appreciates it. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Very good. All right,
Thank you.
we'll move on to item B.
Continued discussion of flood insurance recommendation for 2024.
We're going to continue to discuss the recommendation to cancel all flood insurance policies, and Michelle is up here again. Michelle.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm going to lower that just a little bit. City staff recommends the City Commission either cancel our current flood insurance policies on existing buildings or maintain those policies. guess I'm supposed to advance the slide. So it was recommended that the city evaluate whether flood coverage was needed because of the certified levy or risk. And the original recommendation was presented at the previous two city commission meetings, the 20th and the 27th. All of our buildings are in Zone X. And as previously mentioned, the Kansas Department of Emergency Management Mitigation Office actually has funding opportunities, programs that are grant funded that would assist the city of Ottawa in the event there was a flood and damage to buildings, which would assist with mitigation and administrative and management costs. If a flood completely destroys the insured buildings and the contents, we would receive an estimated amount of $26,936,850. And the total replacement costs of all these covered buildings under the policies would equate to $96,776,677. And after we would receive reimbursement from the insurance carrier, there is a 42% gap. And that amounts to $69,674,372 left on building replacement costs. And in your packet, there's a chart that depicts the costs, which include the premium, the deductible, and replacement costs. And it also shows what the gap is. The city covers 15 buildings with either NFIP or excess flood coverage. And next, there's another chart that's attached, Exhibit B, that shows the number of cities that we contacted that had a certified, or excuse me, an accredited levy. And this information was provided by staff at the Kansas Department of Agriculture, an NFIP coordinator. So we reached out to 21 cities, and only 8 that responded do not have flood insurance, and 6 do. And we did not receive responses from the others that we contacted last week. And you can see that information in the packet.
Just real quick, do you recall which ones that had the flood insurance, or
Yeah.
if you happen to have, I'm just kind of curious which ones had it and which ones didn't?
Which ones had it? Yes, I can read that to you. So, City of Great Bend, Lawrence, Manhattan, Augusta, Winfield, and Kansas City, Kansas. And the City of Hutchinson only insured their levy. I'm not sure how that worked, but I talked to their city attorney, and that's what he shared with me. As far as financial considerations, savings could potentially be attained by increasing the NFIP deductible to either $5,000 or $10,000. And just some detail on a $5,000 deductible, the average is about a 5% savings, and these are on our new premiums that we received after the last meeting. And $10,000 deductible, about 9%. Now, the range, the savings, like on one policy was $41 and up to $325 on the $5,000. And this isn't in your packet. This is just some notes that I've got. And then on the $10,000 deductible. It ranged from either $68 that we potentially would get a refund on to $568 on the higher end policy. So the recommended action, there is a risk of a flood, but the probability is low. So the city commission has 3 options: to cancel all the flood insurance policies, and the savings of those budgeted expenses would be set aside to build a reserve for budgeted replacement costs and contents, maintain all flood insurance policies, or eliminate and maintain coverage on select buildings. And today you can take final action at today's meeting or refer this to the April 10th regular meeting. And as I mentioned before, we have to make a decision before the 10th. I got clarification on from our broker, Hub International, that in order to cancel after we've renewed, if we decide to renew and then cancel, it has to be for valid reasons, and cost is not one of those reasons to cancel a policy after you've renewed. Potentially, we could do that on the excess coverage if that's considered, but I would want to explore that a little more. According to our broker, they would keep, if we canceled, they'd keep 25% of the minimum earned premium, and we'd be able to cancel that after 3 months. But would need to research that a little
Yeah, that's what I
more.
was thinking on that. Okay, good.
And I'll stand for any questions.
Well, let me ask about the $96 million. So that would be if our buildings were completely swept away and gone and missing in action and down the river. I mean, if that's right, because the 51 flood, we've got an awful lot of buildings up and downtown Main Street that are still here. Now, they had a lot of expense, I'm sure, when it came to repairs and cleanup and et cetera, but their buildings are still there. And so at total replacement costs, I can't see where that would be entered into the equation.
So that's all of, according to our insurance carrier, Travelers, these are the current replacement costs of our buildings as it stands now for this policy year.
Okay.
And what would be covered after insurance, the insurance claim was approved and processed, we would receive $26 million in total, and then our out-of-pocket would be over 69 million. I meant 26 million. Sorry if I said 1,000, pardon me.
Okay. And then the FEMA cost share, there's that 75% of eligible activity costs that we could tap into, provided it was designated a disaster area from the president.
That's correct.
And so that 75% of that would reduce that risk even more than at that point. Along with the state has a program too that we could be tapped into, if I understand right.
So there's a number of programs. As I mentioned previously, one requires that we have NFIP insurance
Yeah.
to be eligible for that.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm still thinking this thing through, and I'm still looking at the levee system that was built in the mid-early 60s. It's been tested, I don't know, I'm guessing about a dozen times. I'm guessing, Michael, you've been here, how many times have you closed the floodgates? You've had about 3 or 4 times?
I think since I've been, in the 9 years I've been here, we have not had to close them 3 years.
Okay, so, yeah, I know, close them.
6 years.
So, but we know it works. That's what my point there is, and it's inspected annually by the Corps of Engineers. That's always a good thing. I guess if it breaches, then that could cause a flood here, but I got thinking too, if it breaches, it could breach on the north side, not the south side. And once it did breach, if it did, God forbid, that would eliminate some of the pressure on the south wall, I would think, so that water would go away from city hall buildings or city buildings, not toward them. So the 50-50 chance if there's a breach, it's not gonna come this direction. And again, we can just go back to businesses up and down Main Street. I don't think any of them have flood insurance. And again, I just go back to that, because we have taxing authority, to pay for this is kind of a poor excuse to expense this item, because we can pay for it and tax our citizens. So that's where I'm coming from. I'd still rather, and we've been talking about this, I'd certainly be in favor of the compromise to keep it on our budget item, which we've already got on our budget. After about, well, a couple of years, we'd have about $300,000 for cleanup if we had to, if we kept it for the next year's budget. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'd sure like to entertain the comments from the other commissioners to see where we're at on this.
I'll start. I had voiced lots of questions at our last meeting and still have them, and I appreciate all the information that you brought to us. So thank you for the data that you brought to us. And really, when we're looking at cities, there is just a wide breadth of some are, some aren't. And that tells us that there's all kinds of options for us. But I do go back to what I originally brought up at our last meeting, which was if we have a gap of approximately $70 million between insurance payout and actual insurance covered based on the replacement costs of $96 million of those places that are actually under insurance, if we were to save the $137,000 in a savings account, which we all teach our kids to save, we try and save, everyone tries to save, it's going to take 506 years for us to come up with cost savings of premiums to actually replace the things if they were lost in the flood. I won't be here in 506 years. Maybe somebody else in this room will.
I'm eating better.
But, yes, well, and
Not that good,
yay
though.
for you. But I just, this isn't, I'm concerned about the statement about this as a poor excuse to tax citizens, because we're not saving money. We're not taking this out of our budget. The $137,000 is not coming out of our budget. It would be moved from one line item to another line item, and it would take us 506 years if something were to happen to one of our buildings to replace it at the cost of today. Saying that, because construction costs won't ever go up in 506 years, I'm sure. It'll be exactly what it is today. Because it's exactly what it was 5 years ago. No, it's not. And we all know that it will go up. So I think there is a compromise to do here. I do think that there's a lot of policies within this list that maybe we don't need. I think absolutely right. We may be overinsured on some of these things. But I do think that there are important pieces that we need to really look at insuring. I think that our fire station needs to be insured. Our police station needs to be insured. I think our electric plant needs to be insured. I think we want clean wastewater, and we want that insured. So I would be fine with looking at, taking some of these things off the list, but I don't know that I'm good with taking everything off the list.
I guess I need to clarify myself there too. I know it's still on the budget item, but if we don't write a check for the flood insurance, then we're not expensing it. We're keeping the taxpayers' money here in a fund. And so that's what I was referring to. I realize it's still on the budget for this year. Just clarification there. Right.
Is one of the things that we're in the process of putting together, but with which we just haven't had the time with our resources, is we're transitioning to like quarterly business BPRs, business performance reviews, and looking at all of our funds in that way. It's just, that takes a lot of time, and with just turnover and advertisements for vacancies and hiring of positions and trying to transition to a performance measurement system, it's been something it's important, but it hasn't been urgent. And then because we do anticipate giving all of our coverage, not just the flood insurance, but our property and casualty, the entire work over to determine what's the right ratio of coverage for what, so that way we're not over-insuring while at the same time making certain that we're not under-insuring. It's something is on our strategically important list. We just haven't had the time to make it urgent, given the turnaround and everything that we have going on right now. But I just wanted you to know that we will be coming to you down the road with ideas and recommendations as these things evolve on our premiums and our coverage, and it's something that we are well aware of, and we're trying to bring more of a business-like review to this asset management.
That's what I was thinking about too. I noticed one of the comments in here was that we started the flood insurance 2012 at the recommendation of our property and casualty broker. Well, this person's on a commission. They're not very objective. I would rather we get a consultant if we're going to look at our insurance and have somebody that doesn't benefit from the sale of insurance to review our policies, just for future reference. Anyone else? Let's talk about it.
I do think one thing I would want to point out, to me, kind of looking at some of the key buildings, being our water treatment main building, wastewater treatment plant, operations lab, and electric production, is 63 million of the 96 million, and all three of those are over 96% gap. And so I think I would be kind of open to looking at.
And that's one of the ones that we're in the process of
And
wanting to review first, because we feel there may be some overcoverage there.
Yeah, and maybe, obviously other places, if we are looking at redoing this, what are the things that in this case where there are total loss, what are the services that we need up first? While I think the fire station and police station and city hall are important, if we have a FEMA level emergency in town, they are not as important to me, and I would assume citizens, as water treatment and wastewater. Clean water, I would say, is paramount to where we sit at this dais. We can sit in a tent, is my opinion. I think those are the things that I would really like to look at with that size of gap, either doing something, if that's, reallocating some of that excess premium from here, from City Hall. I think would be being better stewards of those funds to try to close some of those gaps, even if we don't cancel coverage. I think, like you said, a review would be great from an outside third party, someone who may have a better understanding of how these work, and maybe they've worked places that these events have happened. Because I'd be remiss to cancel it, and then we have a flood, and FEMA doesn't. The FEMA funds aren't unlimited. We know that it's from federal government. It's all competitive. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get a single dollar from that. So I definitely don't want to count on that as well. And as Commissioner Kaler mentioned, you take our premiums and multiply them out. We will never save the amount of money we would ever receive if there were an issue. So thank you for all your work on getting all of that.
The commissioners?
Just with my rough math, and remember, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a banker, and I'm just, nope, I'm neither one of them. But if we were to take items, and if we were to take items 6 through 15 off the list, that's about a $60,000 savings. If we were to take the excess premiums off the list, we would, have another savings of 81. So we're looking at some savings there, if that's what we're looking at, is to save. Just some ideas. I have very little heartache about letting go of insurance coverages for many of the things that are further on in the list, on page, I think it's page 23. Yeah.
I would agree on that. I think some of the things that are, under $500,000, something that's $200,000, I would be more apt to let that go than something that's $20 million or $25 million, potentially.
Well, I know we're under some time pressure here, like you said, Michelle. If I understand that right, if we did pay them, the premium's not refundable, is that correct?
Is it on everything again? Or it's just you said
Repeat
some of
that
those
again.
premiums are due?
So on the NFIP, the cancellation, the valid cancellation reasons are duplicate policies, duplicate policy from another source other than the NFIP. Insurance is no longer required by the lender, and we don't have any mortgages on any of those buildings, and nullification prior to the policy effective date. And the excess, we'd need to research that a little further.
And we even had bond counsel check the transcripts to make sure we didn't have any sort of coverage obligations as well.
Okay.
So are you telling me it's an all or nothing? We can't take some of these policies and say we no longer want them?
No, we can cancel them. We can tell them now that
Okay.
because most of them renew on the 27th of April. There's one policy that renews on the 10th.
So that's the policy we really need to decide about today.
And I can't off the top of my head tell you which one that is.
Okay.
Dan, can you answer a question possibly for me? So we're discussing a couple different policies here, and one of them is the, item 5 as mentioned, was wastewater treatment plant operations lab. And then 11 would be water treatment plant. I guess the wastewater treatment lab, that's essential, correct, to keep the wastewater treated?
And, yes.
Okay. And then the water treatment plant main building, I'm assuming, is essential to keep the water running?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you want to explain that those
So,
are in that?
so Brian mentioned that. We've actually had the city engineer send out someone to evaluate the wastewater treatment plant because of the values. And they looked at each one of these that are insured, and we believe that they are most likely over-insured. I've sent that information to our adjuster, who's sent it to Travelers for evaluation, and I haven't heard back yet. So there's an ongoing conversation, and we got that report late Friday afternoon, if that makes sense.
So commissioners, if we're all in agreement, I guess, if we're looking for the essential buildings to insure, 4, 5, and 11,
These are all in there. They just, they want to do it.
That
the
was-
electric production plant, wastewater treatment plant, and then the water treatment plant main building?
That was what I was thinking. I think that would be a
And I'm
temporary.
sorry, I asked that as a question.
and I
I
guess-
wasn't, if there was anything else that we were trying to, include in that.
I'm absolutely, I'm 100% with 4, 5, and 11. I think we do need to consider, at some point, we probably do need to consider fire station and police station, because here's the thing, if we were to actually have a catastrophic flood in our community, we want to make sure that public safety is absolutely paramount. If that means that our fire station's out and we don't have a way to care for those that may unfortunately have a fire, pretty important. And police station too. So I would say that those are important. I deliberately did not bring up City Hall because I don't believe that, I think we can do business anywhere. I think we would lose a tremendous amount. I don't think that we would be able to, not even begin to touch what it would cost to actually replace City Hall. And remembering, it's not just the building, it's everything that's in City Hall. It's everything. So I would like us to consider the fire station and police station too.
So, Michelle, is there a possibility of renewing those 5 and eliminating the other 10? And then having that discussion on that gap?
So fire, police,
1, 2, 4, 5, and 11.
yes.
Just a suggestion, commissioners.
How do you feel about the excess premiums? Because I'm assuming when we renew it, we're also renewing excess premiums.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get to either take that out or leave it in.
Well, and like with flood, we pay more for excess premium than we do for the base coverage.
Yeah.
You know, twice as much almost. So
But that also
that's how you
eliminates
get
part
that
of the
coverage
gap.
amount. That's the
Right.
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
Yeah.
That's how we eliminate the gap.
And like you said, the deductible doesn't help us that much to go to 10,000
No.
versus these numbers here, so I guess and they intentionally do that, I think, but that's insurance business. What would that total be then, what we're looking at? If we eliminate the excess premium, you're saying? And
Yes.
just insure, what was that again, as an idea, is 1, 2, 4, 5, 11?
Yes.
2, 4, 5, 11.
Zach's gonna do the numbers for us.
We need music at this point. This is where IT needs to have some Jeopardy music or something they could play along with
Trickling
it. So
water.
yeah, exactly.
No.
Mhm.
See, I thought that Commissioner Clayton would have the Sean Connery accent for the.
Really disappointed actually that he
SNL.
doesn't.
I'm really bad at accents. They all sound like Borat, so I don't do them. Roughly 27.5 would be the remaining.
Out of 137?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we got rid of the excess
Excess.
and we just did 1, 2, 4, 5, 11.
No. Are we still wanting to expense that and put that the remainder? Or are we just wanting to eliminate?
That was staff's recommendation that you put it in savings.
And I would be
Cover,
fine with that.
but that, we assumed a kind of an all or none, just a binary decision.
Well, most certainly, I mean, no, I'll take it. Never mind.
So the premium be around 27.5. If we go with just the regular premium, take out the excess. Is that what I understand, right?
I do think we need to remember, when we take out the excess, the gap is going to,
Right.
multiply.
Right.
And so I'm concerned about taking out the excess premium. I mean, we would already be taking out 15 and 29, or I'm sorry, and 36. We'd already be taking out the 36,000 excess premium. So if we kept the roughly 30,000 and 15,000, right? We would still have a savings of the line item 3, 6, 8. I'm gonna get lost now. 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then the excess cost on 3, which is right around 36,000. Certainly a savings.
That is a savings. What's that number now? What we got?
Well,
If we eliminated,
Banker Mike, what is that number?
I'm not good with numbers. Zach is, so go ahead, Zach.
62,
82.
70,
82,
savings of 75.
70.
Which of the buildings has?
Or what we're saving or what we would still spend?
What we're gonna still spend if we do this.
That's
64.
what we have planned.
64,000.
I know that.
So we're just adding
These are all
the two
included in that.
excess, the
I know
15,
that.
7, and
I
29.
understand that, but we haven't.
Well, remembering that our current cost is 155.
Be 72,000.
We have budget.
Oh, yeah, you
Right.
did the 36, yeah.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
or we've got excess and, yeah, but the total cost is 155.
Mm.
Okay.
So that's
Correct.
almost $100,000 savings,
Say it again, 100,000.
right?
91.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just under $100,000
Mhm.
savings.
For the, without the excess premium.
Without,
No, including we would include the excess premium in fire and police, but city halls would go away, which is
Right.
36,000.
Right. But that would, so we had 15.7 and then almost 30,000, so that's 45,000, added 27,000. So the premium would be around 72,000, if my numbers.
Yeah, so we'd save about 65.
Okay.
based off of that 155 total cost minus 1750 deductible.
So we're basically cutting that
Cut
total
it in
premium in
half.
half, close to half what we were talking before the day started, right?
Right. And I want to remind you, like Brian mentioned earlier, and I did, we have sent an evaluation to travelers to determine what our property values are at the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
They're less, so if, I don't know if that factors in. Brian, I don't know if you want to add it, say anything about that. I mean, we don't have an update to hear
No,
back, and it's gonna impact our building values. And I don't know if that's relevant at this point.
I don't
but-
mind using back of the envelope math for concepts, but when I'm trying to make an actual decision, that's when my OCD kicks in. So the more fine-tuned and sharpened the pencil is, the more comfortable I am.
Did you say one of the ways we could change the policy was excess coverage? I couldn't remember what you said, the reasons, how you could change the policy.
So what I was told by our broker is that they would keep 25% of the premium, earned premium back, and the policy would be in effect for 90 days. But again, I probably need to get more clarification.
What were the reasons we could cancel
For
after
the-
the renewal date?
Yeah. They're not cost. Cost is not a reason.
Right.
Duplicate NFIP policies, a duplicate policy from a source other than NFIP, insurance no longer required by the lender. We don't have any, at this time, have no mortgages on the properties, and nullification prior to the policy effective date.
But I think we need to consider too is that it's not, the decision we're making isn't forever. These insurance policies renew every single year, and we can have this conversation every single year. So it's not like we're making the decision, we're not making a decision for the next commission, we're making a decision for the next 12 months. And so it appears to me as though we have found some ways to save some costs, and that may be enough.
And even with, if we approve this amended amount we're talking here, there, and if we do have a flood event, there's still federal assistance that we can tap into, even with our insurance, if I understand it right. So, if we're short coverage something, I don't know, we don't, of course, that's a great unknown. Will the president declare a disaster area? You seem, other presidents have declared other areas that have flooded before, and I'm sure if we get a major flood, it's not gonna be just us, it's gonna be a lot of cities around us, like it was in 51, but I don't know.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm willing to make a motion.
Okay, outline it, please.
Yes, I would move that we continue insurance coverage, or flood insurance coverage for items listed in our agenda on page 23 for items 1, 2, 1, which is the fire station, 2, which is the police station, 4, which is the electric production plant, 5, which is the wastewater treatment plant operations lab, and 11, which is the water treatment plant, building 1, the water production plant, including keeping the excess premium on the fire department and the police department for this next year.
Anything else?
Nope.
Covered it? All right. You hear the motion. Is there a second on that motion?
I will second that.
There is a second. Any other discussion on this?
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes. Did I get them wrong?
No, you're good.
sorry.
Just a question, just so we're 100% sure, and we're still going to expense the full amount,
So the remainder will go to a fund to just accumulate over a period of years? Or do we just want to expense the amount that's due for the premiums? In my mind, we're only talking $70,000 difference, and as you spoke earlier, with $150,000 difference, we could go 1,000 years now and still not have enough money. So I don't see the reason for expensing the full amount. I think just what's due for the
I think that's absolutely
premiums, and then that's a little bit of savings. That's $500,000 of savings for the taxpayers.
Maybe our city manager could, because our city attorney is not present, but if our city manager could weigh in on it. I mean, if nothing is stated and it's silent in the motion, it leaves the city staff to make a decision.
And we would essentially default to status quo because we would err on not changing policy.
Okay.
So,
So you would rather see it contained within the motion if you would like it to be not expensed?
correct, because
Okay.
we would, I'd go to Blaine, but I would literally break it down by word. And if you're saying this is what you do, depending on how it's worded, that's what we would do. If there's any sort of gray area, then we would default to status quo. Which, what I mean by that is we would just not renew it because we're not currently setting aside. So that's our current practice with respect to that.
So I think procedurally, I think that motion can move forward, and then the next motion could be to what will we do with the cost savings. So I'm going to leave my motion for the way it is, and then we can have that conversation about what happens with the savings. Because honestly, if it doesn't pass, there's no savings.
Great.
Good point. Any other questions or comments before we vote? If not, let's take a roll call vote, please.
How do you vote, Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore?
And I'm going to vote no. Thanks. Okay. Now let's discuss the reserve that could be built up if needed, and I think it's a good point Commissioner Crowley brought up. It wouldn't be that much. I mean, $70,000 is a lot of money, of course, but is there a need for it? Should we just expense it and then the budget item would just, Brian, it would just be amended, or we would just not spend the money and it would just stay in our account anyway? We're just saying we wouldn't designate it specifically for flood remediation if it came up to the case we needed to use it for.
It would just, yeah, it would go in each of the respective funds, unencumbered fund balance.
Okay, good. All right.
If these changes are, April 10th or at the end of April for this year, could we make the motion for this year because that would give us 70,000 for 1 year in that reserve, which would cover not a catastrophe, but would be available for like the police station. We had what, 13,000, I believe, in damage. Would be a fund to cover these small incidentals instead of it just getting lost in the wash, like basically this year, and then plan for next year to not.
Or have
No.
that discussion then?
Yeah, because I mean, since we've already budgeted for this year, the money's already coming in. I think it would be better to keep it in flood, just as it'll cover small incidentals from.
Gap or anything.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's fair.
like you said, $74,000 isn't nothing. That's, a quarter of water treatment plant sludge lift. If it gets to that point. And then next year, as soon as we're reviewing the budget for next year, we make that plan according to if we want to, keep it or not even bring it in. Because like as you mentioned, with that being $500,000, that could have, if we can find $500,000 2 or 3 places before you know it, it's a substantial impact.
So if we don't make a motion, it just stays status quo?
Well, we're not setting aside, so it would just, we wouldn't renew, and it's in the fund balance of the respective funds, which, the bulk of those premiums are spread across your utility funds and not your property tax funds. So, but again, you're looking also at, you have a gap of anywhere from an actual facility of 97% for our treatment facilities at the water plant to 1% for nominal coverage for the high service pump station at Building 2 for the water treatment facility. So we've got a wide spectrum of gaps there that even paying everything, we're only covering 3% of those replacement costs. So that's you look at the best practices and it's like, is that worth, that's the tough decision for you folks.
Well, if we needed the money, and we didn't have a reserve fund for it, we would spend it, we would use our money from somewhere to pay for these repairs one way or another. I mean, if we did not reserve this 70+ thousand we're talking about, the excess, and we needed the money for repairs around here, we'd certainly pull it from somewhere, whether our idle funds or somewhere to pay for repairs. So it's whether, okay. So whether you want to reserve it or not, I guess that's the question right now. If we don't, we won't expense it and it'll reduce
And
our.
it's something that can go, I mean, it'll be in the fund and we can actually have that as a budget discussion because it's going to be
Absolutely.
reflected in that unencumbered fund balance. And we already know that we're not setting aside for what we know needs to be replaced anyway
Well, yeah.
for life cycle costing.
Normal.
So,
wear and tear, yeah.
We can break it down too by the savings by fund, so we can highlight that during our budget discussions here as we get into May.
I think we budgeted 145,000 for this year, rough, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, someone want to make a motion on that, we'll entertain it. If not,
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner.
I'll make a motion that for fiscal year 2024, the excess balance that was allocated in the 2024 approved budget to remain an unencumbered flood insurance fund. And
So you want us to create a flood insurance fund and set that money aside? That's what the motion would be.
That's, yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
With the discussion each year for the budget cycle, if we are increasing, continuing that or decreasing it just to coverage level.
We would, yeah, sure we do that. Okay, is there a second on that motion? Is there a second on that? Go ahead.
I don't have a problem making a second on the motion. I do have a discussion point, though.
Okay.
So I don't know that we can bind further commissions to have a discussion every single year
Oh.
as a part of your motion. So we cannot bind a commission in 10 years, requiring them to have that conversation. So I think we want to be careful about how that motion goes, because if somebody's looking back, we can't tell them they're responsible for having that conversation. We can and I'm in favor of your motion, I just am concerned that we can't bind a commission.
Yeah, I understood that too, and I think you just meant for this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Okay, and is that a second? There's a second on that. Any other discussion on this? Let's have roll call vote, please.
How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore.
And I'm gonna vote no again. Motion carries. All right, a lot of good discussion tonight. Thank you all for your participation. Again, Michelle, you and your team, thank you for all the information you put together, especially this last week, some pertinent information we needed to make this decision, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
We'll move on to, what do we have next? Comments by any other new business no one else want to bring up? We can talk about. We're good there? We'll do that another time. Comments by our city manager.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Commission. Before I get started, I'd like to point out that we do have 2 new employees that have joined us over the past several weeks. We have Officer Horatio Hernandez, who joined us from Houston, Texas. He has friends who went to Ottawa University and had visited and enjoyed it here and wanted law enforcement as a career and chose our beautiful little corner of the world to put out his law enforcement shingle. So we're grateful to have him. And I'll discuss Colson Bean here in a little bit. He's our newest member of Neighborhood Services as we go through some of our blight mitigation and abatement items on my report. I do want to start off, though, by clarifying our discussion on the service line premium coverage or our contract for that service line warranty program, and we actually do have it in special parks. It started back in 2013, and going forward, 2021 we collected $11,156. 2022 it was $12,260. 2023 we had budgeted $12,500 and collected $12,595, and 2024 is currently budgeted at the previous year actual of $12,595, and that can be found in 4-1600-392.05. So it just, we haven't collected it yet, and the reports that I run are based upon what do we actually have in hand for cash basis and modified accrual. So I didn't have that reflected yet. But when I went to the budgets, that's what we currently have. I would like to point out that we had recently, at our last commission meeting, had discussed the homeless situation around town. We had several encampments with some debris fields, and as Lucas coordinates our efforts here at City Hall and shepherding our problem-oriented service activities, I'm proud to say that Public Works did the bulk of the heavy lifting, if you will, with the dumpsters, and with the assistance of Lucas and his neighborhood services crew, and our police department and community policing and Lieutenant Luft. So I want to thank them. I also have a summary of last week's response, including some images that are at the bottom of this report, kind of showing the before and after that Director Hafley provided for us. We have the homeless mitigation and debris management. We undertook that project, those areas, to clean up the abandoned camps, and made notable efforts along the levee at the north end of Forest Park. Cleanup involved substantial resources, indicating that our organization, through the commission's leadership, being committed to addressing the homelessness and the associated fallout and debris from that. And it was, again, through Lucas's coordination and neighborhood services and our partners with our law enforcement, community, and Public Works. And then I did want to point out that, as is often the case when we're dealing with these things, and in fact, a recent inquiry even regarding the policy or lack of that we're working on for the Legacy Square restroom buildings, where it's the debris and some of the paraphernalia and associated substance abuse issues that can make cleanup of these debris fields problematic. And so I want to commend our folks for taking adequate safety and compliance protocols to make sure that they were taking care of watching out to move diligently and deliberately with sufficient personal protective equipment to clean that up. So I just want to say thank you. And then I included those resources and conversations that'll be held later this month in and around our area, focused mainly in Lawrence. We have some additional abatement activities that are underway. I want to point out that in the 700 block of South Cherry, we had a citizen report some concern regarding a salvage debris field of automobiles in the area. And so the property owner has been identified and has been issued a notice of violation, and has a 14-day time frame to commit to cleaning that property up. And so there's a reinspection scheduled for tomorrow on April 4th to reevaluate compliance and determine the need for further action. Also, to follow up on the citizen comments complaints from our March 20th meeting in the area of 9th and Walton, just that we've had 2 property owners adjacent to the concerned citizen that were sent letters on March 20th outlining the violation and the necessary corrective measures. And following that, a reinspection of the property shows that the condition remains blighted and is non-compliant, and so that will prompt a follow-up letter to address this non-compliant situation. And then Lucas wanted to make a point to commend our new employee, Colson, who's been proactively engaged with property owners to address and rectify these concerns. Initiatives are not only focused on direct communication, but also reducing our backlog of cases and waiting actions. So we're already looking at streamlining that process and seeing some positive results early on. So it's always good when we can get that positive momentum and keep that inertia rolling. The dangerous and unsafe structures, we're in the process of, we have numerous properties identified, and we are working with our city attorney to define and solidify our internal procedures to ensure that our municipal codes, our organizational practices, and the state statutes are all in alignment, because it is a personal property right. So we want to make darn certain that we're following all the relevant process, procedures, and laws so that we can not only enhance our efficacy, but also the legality of our abatement actions. So also wanted to point out that it is spring, which means it's an annual backflow notice. So I included a flyer that's going out. That's obviously a larger run that'll be chopped up into 3 or 4 parts, but essentially says that a certified backflow inspector is required to do the inspection and to submit that to the city. And if they have questions, to contact our water plant at 229-3690. So that concludes my report. I wanted to kind of keep it code heavy, if you will, and cleanup heavy, so that we could show, because we've had a lot of that kind of come to the surface recently, and so I wanted to specifically address that. But if you have any questions regarding what we've covered or another city operation for myself or our department directors, please let us know.
Mr. Silcott,
Yes, sir.
is Mr. Bean in addition to an existing employee that we had that did similar, or is he replacing?
He replaced
Okay.
Oscar, who's retired.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
You had mentioned in the cleanup the Legacy Square restrooms. I know we're kind of at that crux of getting out of winter, getting into summer. Are they open currently? Are they?
As I
Is it
under
a mix of weather and issues with them?
a little bit of both, but as I understand it, we generally only tend to open them since the closure. Plus, they just bad timing, because with COVID, and I know in looking back through the minutes, there was a lot of discussions on, are they open, are they closed, should we, shouldn't we? And so it's kind of been up in the air, but the vandalism was not the worst of it. It was the paraphernalia and the needles that necessitated the multiple occurrences for that initial closure in the spring of 22. And so we've essentially only opened them during what we know to be high traffic events. So if we're aware of like an ultra marathon coming through, or one of the trail activities for the bikes, or a community event, we open it. Or if we know that someone's going to be down there and specifically request it, we'll do that. But we're currently in discussions about a way to try and maybe do some business hours, but to try and also have an education campaign for our public so that folks can be aware and be alert for their own safety, because, a lot of kids go into there and they may not be aware. So we want to make sure that we're being proactive and not finding out about a problem when there is one. So we want to try and stay ahead of it, and that requires a lot of effort. And when folks are doing something, they're not doing something else. So, or if they're doing something else, then that something's not getting done. So we want to make sure that we think through how we want to workflow that, so that we're ensuring that if we do do an experimental window that we stay ahead, educate the public, and also if we have to close it down, we'll put the word out and also put some signs up so that folks understand why we've had to do that. So we'll try and stay actively engaged in the communications channel with respect to why it's closed and why it's open and why we need to be mindful.
Okay, thank you.
And on the camping, I know we briefly talked about a camping ordinance. I know our attorney was going to be working on some language. Is that still being?
Yes, and we were anticipating a May discussion, so that way if any individuals wanted to participate in the April conversations, that might help frame the conversation.
Good. All right, very good. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to the commissioners' comments. How about Commissioner Crowley, you want to start?
I have none.
Pro Tem Allen?
No comment.
Anything? Commissioner Kaler?
None at this time.
Commissioner Clayton?
I guess the one comment I would have would be kind of an ask, I guess across probably several departments who answer the phones, and potentially maybe even social media. I know there has been a lot, and I've had people kind of ask me regarding the fiber installation and a request line for the contact for if it's through Qualcomm or who they need to contact for issues. And I've specifically heard several who have called to the city and have not been met with the most amicable greeting. And so I would just kind of ask that if we can get that number, give it to folks who are kind of frontline phone folks to just share. I'm sure there's no win for us. We're going to get the calls regardless, as people think it's us doing the work.
Right. And in the absence of a right-of-way ordinance or a lack of having some sort of ductile utility lane, it's going to be a hot mess. So what we can do is try and be as informative as possible and to make certain that we communicate proactively. And so we'll continue to do that. And I'm sorry for that negative contact that was had. I know the ladies up front, from my observation, if they spoke to them, they've always been pleasant and have provided that number. Oftentimes, continuing to have discussions with residents 15, 20 minutes after they've been made aware that and with state law and recent actions, the right-of-way is not as safeguarded as it was prior to a few years back because of some of the legislative actions at the top that pretty much allow not fully unfettered, but essentially so.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
It is, okay, good. And I don't want to diminish the importance of our appointments we did under item 7 earlier. I'm going to name these people because it's very important these people volunteering their time to be on these boards for reappointment. Crystal Anderson, Karen Walburn, Linda Normile, Pete Weber, Scott Vink, and Diana Starsnake Dean. And these people are sometimes unsung heroes, and they're certainly working for our community to make it a better place serving on these boards. So thank you for agreeing to be reappointed. I also want to point out the citywide cleanup that is this weekend. Is that right, Michael? You want to talk about that briefly?
Yes, Friday and Saturday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent.
We'll have 3 locations. I can name 2 of them right off the top of my head. I'm
that's-
sorry. One of them will be the parking lot over here to the west of City Hall. And the other one will be at basically the intersection of North Street and Cherry Street. That's where people can take their tires and their tree limbs will still go out to the West 2nd Street.
Oh, very good. You got
So,
it.
but
And the county recycling.
county recycling.
Very good.
I'm sorry, it's changed
Every
since I
year's
got
different
back.
place. Yeah, why don't you have
Certainly
more?
they can contact City Hall if they have any questions.
They most
Yeah,
definitely
the
can,
website.
yes.
And,
Yes,
and
thank
to
you.
clarify, it's not free dump day at the transfer station. It's just at our specified location.
That is correct. It is not free dump day at the transfer station. It is
That is coming.
citywide cleanup to drop your stuff off, unwanted items at any of the 3 locations previously mentioned for Ottawa citizens.
Yes, no oil, no fuel, no propane,
Paint,
No nuclear waste, no, okay.
no biohazard.
yeah.
No bodies, okay, good. All right, thank you, Michael, appreciate that. One last thing, too, I want to point out, Amelia Kayler's here tonight. I want to point that out because last week I was up at the high school, we had a tornado drill, and she held the door for all of us to get into the safe zone. She was the last one in. Had there been a tornado, you might have blown away, but you sacrificed your life to let us get practiced in, so thank you very much for your diligent work and your sacrifice.
Anytime.
Okay, I'll remember that. Looks like we need an executive session. Well, announcements be April 10th, next city commission meeting along with April 17th. And so we go into executive session. Do we have a motion?
10 minutes, please.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner.
I move that the commission recess into an executive session for, hold on one
8:30?
second, at 8:20, for a period of 10 minutes with the city manager. Does anybody else can be present?
No.
City manager will be present for the purpose of personnel matters of non-elected personnel. No action will be taken. And the justification for this closed session is to engage in confidential and privileged communication with the city manager, and the open meeting will resume at 8:30 in this room.
Very good. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We go into executive